What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into Stock Weekly Postgame Show. I am your host, Rob Haytan. Join with me are my co-hosts, Franco and Ian Angelo, alongside Seamus Zarlinga. Guys, the Boston Celtics fell to the Oklahoma City Thunder tonight on the road, 127 to 123. Boston's comeback efforts fell short there in that fourth quarter. Late heroic little run. Kristaps Porzingis' foot isn't a size 22 and is maybe a size 21. The Celtics would have been in a better position and situation to, maybe win this game. However, those third quarter struggles were too much for the Celtics to overcome. Guys, it was a game in which we were talking about in the group chat as, not a write-off game, but a game in which we kind of anticipated the Celtics might drop this one. They've been playing some really good basketball. They're on the road, and it's against a really good Thunder team, Franco. However, that third quarter could be concerning. But what did you like tonight? What did you dislike? Your general overall thoughts on the game?
I mean, going into this season, the outliers were in the January schedule. This game, they're heading out to Oklahoma City to head home against the Utah Jazz after being on a home stretch. And I really think that the team had a good control of the pace of the game during the first half, which seemingly fell apart during the second, which was a struggle earlier on in the season, which we thought was a dead issue, but it seemed to reoccur tonight, and the Celtics did too much with too little time on the clock, and the Thunder came out as a young, energetic team that they've proven themselves to be throughout this year, and that's kind of what the tone of the Western Conference is. And if you look on the Eastern Conferences, these young teams are really starting to rise.
Rob, it may shock you. I'm actually not mad that the Celtics lost this game.
I knew you were going to say that.
I know it's very surprising. I'm not overreacting over the fact that the Celtics lost the game. I will say the Celtics lost this game in the third quarter, though. Allowing 40 points in the third quarter to a team like OKC, you just can't really come back from that. Jaylen Brown did not have a very good game. Drew Holiday played really bad. He got benched for Peyton Pritchard. But Kristaps Porzingis played a great game. Jason Tatum played a great game. Derek White was huge down the stretch. But what are you going to do? SGA was incredible. He's one of the best players in the league for a reason. He's a top 5 MVP candidate for a reason. And, this is just kind of the way the Celtics defense goes is you want the other team's, role players to beat you. And we just happen to get beat by Josh Giddey, of all people. So it happens. It's a tough game. And I'm kind of happy. I'm kind of happy that the Celtics didn't kind of like roll over and die because they had a really solid chance to do that. And it felt like the game was kind of headed that way, but it didn't. And I don't know if Porzingis pulled a LeBron or KD, and if his foot was a little bit smaller and behind the line, it might have been a different game. Might have been a different game, but what are you gonna do? I can't really fault Porzingis. He was having a great game overall. So, what are you going to do? All you got to do is just be ready for the game on Friday.
I loved the Celtics' use of Jason Tatum tonight. I thought Tatum played a great game. Not surprised. I know who he is. 30, 13, 8. I thought Kristaps, again, he's just getting more and more comfortable. This was a winnable game. I'm not mad we lost. This is what a game I consider, I texted you guys this, a luxury game, right? Where if you win it, you're like, awesome. This is how good this team can be. But if you lose it, you're kind of like, you tip your caps to Oklahoma, right? You're like, you know what? This is a young team. They've been playing some great hoops. They're on their home floor, East versus West. This is a Celtics team that has been due for kind of a little outlier game. I don't say outlier as in discrediting Oklahoma, but what I mean outlier is it's not every day that Jaylen Brown shoots 4 of 18 and Drew Holiday shoots 2 of 8 alongside 3 turnovers and a minus 15 plus minus. You're not going to, those are outlier games for those players. And, Josh Giddey made a season high 4 threes. So this is a game in which Oklahoma came to play and Boston really just kind of had a collapse in that third quarter. I would prefer it if that third quarter collapse wasn't as bad. You figure if it's a 9-point game entering the fourth, which we kind of got it down to late, went into that third quarter. Once Chet checked out of the game, we got it down to 9, and then 2 threes from Oklahoma put that lead back up to 15, which eventually was the reason Boston was unable to get this thing down. It's one of those games. We shot relatively all right from 3, 37.5 isn't terrible. I loved our shot selection in terms of I thought we did a solid job getting to the basket. And again, going back to Tatum, this is the Jason Tatum we know. There, I think, is a situation that we're seeing right now is the Celtics need to figure out how to unlock Tatum, Brown, and Porzingis. It feels like it's Porzingis and someone else, or it's Brown and Tatum. It's never Brown and Tatum and Porzingis. More times than not, I think, again, they're still figuring this whole thing out. But, it's one of those games. And Kristaps has been great. And so that brings us to the player of the game, which is none other than Kristaps Porzingis. The dude continues to impress. 34 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 blocks. A super efficient game. 12 of 18 from the floor. He did a phenomenal job getting to the line. 8 of 9 from the stripe tonight from Kristaps. You can kind of get a sense, guys, as to why this guy is here. So, Ian, despite the loss, what is Kristaps doing well for us?
I mean, everything. I mean, we were all concerned heading into the season about the defense with Porzingis, and he was a great defender tonight. He got beat a couple times, but there wasn't really much he could have done on some of the plays. Offensively, Kristaps Porzingis brings the Celtics offense to a different level that we haven't had. He is absolutely automatic when it comes to pretty much everything inside the arc.
Right.
He's automatic. Outside the arc, he's had some weird, bad shooting games this season, but it's kind of expected sometimes. Inside the arc, though, anything inside the arc, he's getting to, and he's making those shots. I'm not gonna say that the refs were bad in this game because they were kind of bad for both sides. But Kristaps Porzingis had at least like 5 and 1s that didn't get called. So I don't know. He could have ended up with more, but what are you gonna do? It happens. But Porzingis was great tonight. Offensively, he was hitting everything. Nobody was stopping him on OKC. So,
and again, it's like this is what's so hard about this postgame show is they've done so well. This team really does not have, outside that third quarter, that really the third. And I want to say this, guys, because the third quarter struggles have gone away recently. This has not been as of the past, I want to say 10 games, the third quarter has not been a problem. So again, my big thing this year has been circling things and highlighting them, and let's address them throughout the course of the year. This third quarter is going to be something we're going to have to keep bringing up and addressing. They've done well. So you figure if you play 11 games and one of them you have a bad third, that's trending the right direction. And that's, again, if you guys remember, Franco, I know you weren't here on the show as we welcome in Seamus, first of all. Seamus, how's it going, man?
Great. Celtics
I'm
lost,
happy to have you here.
Unfortunately. I mean, geez, this game for sure was kind of one of those schedule losses. But it was
that's what we're saying.
Benchmark wise for the Celtics, I really believe that this could have been one of those games where, man, you get past this hump against this young team and you're really looking good going into the future. But instead, they stumble a little bit. And in a lot of aspects of this game, I thought the team lacked. And what we saw at the end of the game, where the team was executing high intensity every single possession, they were locked in, engaged defensively, offensively as well on both ends of the floor. For them to be at the end of this game, in the game, is certainly a point of optimism. But the fact that they had to build something to actually get back into this game and not just be there, like you mentioned, I believe before the post game, Rob, where you, if you're not in that hole, if you're the Celtics,
Right.
you're probably going to win this game, because that was a fourth quarter avalanche by the Celtics, 37 points in the fourth quarter. The problem is they gave up 40 in the third quarter and only scored 25. So if you don't do that, the Celtics probably win this game. And that's certainly some optimism that they were able to come back. But the fact they dug themselves that hole, I mean, we haven't really seen a game like this in a long time. And it's been really a month since we have. And that was in Indiana against the Pacers. And we're going to see these losses against young teams. And at the end of the day, you can't feel too bad about the loss, but you want to see the next game against the Jazz at home. Don't let this snowball now. This next game against a lesser talented team, against a team that's going to have a lot of motivation, they need to come out with high intensity, high energy, and the engagement to execute, like we saw at the end of that fourth quarter tonight against the Thunder.
I think that this Utah game is a great opportunity for them to get their footing this January. And I want to say both Ian and Seamus, I think both of you guys posted this. I know, Ian, you definitely made a video on it. This gauntlet of January that has just the Celtics are faced with. This is a good opportunity for them. December was difficult, but they were playing, some solid teams, but not the craziest of teams. You saw a Clippers who have been playing some great basketball without Kawhi. The Lakers are always a tough matchup. We saw the Magic and the Cavs twice. Those are two games at home where it's like they could go either way. Now we're starting to see some the top dogs. Obviously tonight, Oklahoma on the road again. You lost it. It's okay. You'll get them back when they come back to your place. Then you got Indiana twice. You got Minnesota in the Milwaukee on a second night of a back-to-back after playing Minnesota on the road. You fly to Milwaukee and have to play Milwaukee. So we're kind of in for a weird month here. The Celtics are, because there's a lot of traveling, a lot of different type of style of play. You got Minnesota, who's the top defense in the league, a slower paced, isocentric pick and roll heavy offense. And then on the second night, you play one of the highest paced second offensive rating Milwaukee Bucks. So some weird scheduling here. But going back to what I was saying a little bit earlier on tonight, let's focus on tonight again. Boston, it's all about building blocks. And I remember in that 2020 season, Seamus, that was your thing. You talk about building blocks, right? How can the Celtics add and build to what is going to be eventually a championship season? I think tonight is a good building block for them. In a game on the road against Oklahoma City, you kind of got your asses handed to you in that third quarter. And this will be a good opportunity for the Boston Celtics to look at what went wrong. What did we do wrong? Personally, I thought defensively, I tipped my caps to the Thunder for, making big shots. I think the Celtics played some lazy defense, despite the Thunder making some shots. I think that third quarter, they came out a little heavy-footed, and allowed the Oklahoma City Thunder to get on that run and hit those shots. So as much as you do, as a Celtics fan, say, you know what, you're playing a young team on the road who's super high. It's one you're not too mad about. There are some things that the Celtics can add to these building blocks, and I think on top of that pyramid of these building blocks is that third quarter. If they can figure these third quarters out solid, where you're hardly ever seeing it become a problem, I think that they'll eventually, Franco, get to where they need to go.
Yeah, I mean, this team is, like we've said before, still trying to figure things out, and it's getting to that point where things should start to click a little bit more. And we've seen what all five of these players in our starting lineup have showcased what they're capable of, but we just need to start to see it on a night in and night out basis. I mean, I would have loved to see more of production out of Jrue Holiday and Derek White on the offensive side. Derek White was, as always, a reliable scoring option and efficient from the floor. 7 of 12, 5 for 9 from 3. But Jrue Holiday, he should be helping create plays for Tatum, and Tatum was able to step up tonight. And what I really like from Tatum's stat sheet is 2 for 5 from 3-pointer, rather than forcing his shot, and which Jaylen Brown will talk to you later. I guess he missed out on Tatum's memo. And I think that once this team becomes much more calculated with their shots, and I feel they can control the pace against a team like Oklahoma. And if you drop the ball a little bit against a team like Oklahoma City Thunder and you're in their building, you have Shai Gilgeous, who's playing out of his mind, had 36 points tonight. No, great game from him. And they couldn't really miss a shot. That's the results that's going to happen. But when you have a team this talented, they should be able to control the game throughout all 4 quarters.
I think a part of the reason why I'm not so upset about this is because this isn't playoff basketball. What we watched tonight isn't how a playoff game goes. And as Celtics fans and now as becoming Thunder fans, you got to start thinking about that too, right? For the Thunder, you're young, you're okay if it's not this year. You have this great opportunity, and your window really starts in 2 to 3
How many
years.
picks do they have?
They got a bunch of picks, and honestly,
They
I
have
think
like
that
35 picks over the next 5 years. It's insane.
I don't even know if these picks are at this point they have their squad. They got their guy. They got their two. They got a squad there. But these games, like the Indiana game, right? It's like Boston is playing this game against Indiana. That's just so weird. Where it's like this whole run and gun style of offense that these quick, fast-paced teams, because Boston's good in the open court, but really how they beat you is slowing the game down and getting you play that half-court defense against them and really spacing and opening up the court. And they use the fast break, obviously, to build off of that. You're not going to be able to do that in the playoffs. The game slows down. Possessions become way more valuable. And that's why I'm kind of like, okay, you know what? Sure, you got this one, OKC, because the game changes in the playoffs. There's more to it. So as Celtics fans, again, I think that there's things you'd like to see, and then there's things that happen throughout the course of a year where you're kind of like, okay, I don't think this is a game in April we're going to be coming back to and talking about. Something I do want to talk about though is Drew Holiday. Little weird tonight. Off night in terms of kind of was turning the ball over. He had that 2-play stretch where he turned the ball over on the baseline and then brought the ball back up and had a pick and roll with Porzingis at the top of the key and then got stripped. And then Missoula took him out for Pritchard. And this is the first time all year which Holiday has been starting and playing and not in the game to close it out. Where do we think was this I know he had that injury, that lingering injury. Is this are we fans of this? Are we not fans of this? Do you go to Holiday? What are you supposed to do? You're paying Holiday the money. It's Drew Holiday, yet are you comfortable with just kind of going with whoever's going in the regular season?
Yeah, it's the regular season. We didn't trade for Drew Holiday for the regular season. We traded for him for the playoffs. So I would be more concerned if this was a playoff game and we benched Drew Holiday and had Peyton Pritchard end the game. But I wasn't really mad at the idea. There were times this was just a really bad game overall for Holiday. Maybe he was injured. We don't know that. But I'm not mad at the idea. I found it interesting. Peyton Pritchard was kind of the only guy that could kind of keep up with the pace that OKC was kind of running at. And and the fact that Jason Tatum switched on to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at the end of the game was also probably another reason why it was fine to have Pritchard out there. Tatum he
was phenomenal
in the fourth quarter until
absolutely
at the end of the game, but SGA didn't hit a shot in the fourth quarter. So I guess I'm okay with Drew Holiday not playing in that fourth quarter. Maybe he was injured. Maybe I don't know. He wasn't playing a very good game anyway, and he wasn't guarding SGA very well. I mean, neither one of SGA or Derek White were really stopping SGA at that point. So I'm not mad at what happened. But it was an interesting thing. And it also doesn't help that we had Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday both playing really bad on offense. So having both of them out there at the same time didn't help either. So having Pritchard out there that you don't have to really worry about, I'm not mad at it.
I think something I'm more mad about is the Luke Cornett 15 minutes. This is not a Luke Cornett game. And this is, I think, something, and again, Missoula really hasn't been that bad recently. I think his good has been far outweighing the bad. This is a matchup. The set guys in the lineup are Brown, Tatum, Porzingis, White, Holiday, Horford, Hauser, Pritchard. And even still, Pritchard probably falls into this category I'm saying, but below that needs to be matchup based. You do not need to play Luke Cornett in a game in which the Oklahoma City Thunder are running small, fast guards on. There was a point where Cornett's matchup was Jalen Williams in the corner. Jalen Williams is an athletic 6'7" wing who can jump out of the building, and if you leave him open, will knock down a shot. He was 2 of 2 from behind the arc tonight. So it's like that aspect I think we need to figure out. When another team goes small, you don't run double bigs. There was a point where Cornett and Horford were checked into the game together against the Thunder's small lineup. And if you're going to go big when the Thunder goes small, you should probably go with the skilled interior footwork guy in Kristaps Porzingis to get you easy buckets, where the defense playing out on the wing, is made up for with the offensive firepower that you get. So I think tonight, rotation-wise, he's been good. Brissett's been playing, and then for some reason, you get 15 minutes of Luke Cornett, and a coach's decision did not play for O'Shea Brissett. And a game like this against a young Thunders team, a great rebounder in Brissett could have provided you with the energy you needed, the rebounding that you needed, and I think roughed up some of the Thunder, Seamus.
I personally believe the reason some of the players on the back end of the roster, the reason they don't play during some of these more anticipated games against, well, we see it more competitive opponents. The OKC Thunder, if you really look at their record, they're really not that far away from us right now. For as good as the Celtics have been, the OKC Thunder are not that far away, and for as young as they are. And I believe in some of these games, we play the Sixers, we play the Bucks, play the Thunder. These guys at the end of the roster, I don't believe they're sophisticated enough to run and execute on both ends of the floor at a high enough level to stay in the game. And that's ultimately why you see a guy like Luke Cornett play 15 minutes, is that he is, and his IQ is just a bit higher than some of those other players. And one day we could potentially see some players on the back end of the roster. That's what comes within the development of their game, is that they're able to read the court better on both ends of the floor, and they're better able to position themselves on both ends of the floor. And ultimately, that's why I don't think we see Brissett, Banton, Lamar Stevens in these games, because they're still sort of young players who are not necessarily they haven't been rotational players elsewhere for consistent amount of time. And with the Celtics, I believe Luke Cornett, what we're seeing right now out of him, he's establishing himself as that consistent role player. However, I do sort of agree upon the point of at times this wasn't the matchup for him tonight, although you did see a couple of good minutes out of him. But I thought the Celtics, part of that, the reasoning, I feel maybe potentially this is just a theory behind playing him, is trying to make the Thunder play the Celtics way, play the Celtics pace, play more the way the Celtics want to play rather than be more small and play different lineups. Maybe the Celtics haven't played as much without Luke Cornett, of course, because Luke Cornett has been great as of late, been getting a lot of minutes with different lineups as of late. But I believe that potentially the strategy there is to play towards your strengths and try to make the other team play towards your strengths rather than have to go and create lineups to play towards their strengths, which unfortunately we saw later in this game the Celtics had to do. And we saw that effect with Peyton Pritchard playing crunch time down the stretch. I thought that was little bit of a questionable decision, especially defensively. But the defensive intensity tonight was not exactly there the entire game until down the stretch, and you could say Pritchard had one of the better efforts defensively. And I also want to disclaim this. I said sophisticated in regards to these other players, and when I mean that, not really sophisticated in regards to their actual personalities. It's the player they are, right? Basketball IQ. So I just want to say that about the other players. I feel like it's a little bit of a knock saying players aren't sophisticated, but in a basketball sense, they might not be as further along as some of the players farther up in our rotation and our minutes per game tally. But the Celtics overall tonight, that 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 Luke Cornett situation, certainly interesting, and one of those games where I feel like in the playoffs you certainly see that. This is why teams get ahead in the playoffs in 7-game series. You would see that play out over a 7-game series where you would adjust in game 2, play differently, and we might see a different result if there was a game 2 between these two.
I think that I have a problem with Cornette in the playoff rotation. Matchup. The Raptors is a good matchup for Luke. He can sit on somebody in which is bigger, is slower, is an interior force. He's solid in those matchups. You can play him in games versus teams like even the Timberwolves and the Raptors. Those games he can survive in. A game like the Pacers, like the Thunder, like the Bucks that have these perimeter centric 5-out spread offenses, it is just he's useless. It's useless. And I think, again, I don't know if this means Boston needs to make a move, because I know Franco's been saying this all year, and I really believe it. I think they have what they need on the bench. They just need to learn how to tap into what they have at the correct moments. Because, throwing Luke Cornett in a game against the Thunder is setting him up for failure. And I don't think it's fair to Luke Cornett to say, well, you know what, Luke Cornett, you suck tonight. Because this isn't a matchup which he should need to go in and do his job. He's a role player for a championship team. Those types of players need to do their jobs. They should not have to be asked to step out of their comfort zone per se, or their roles too often. And I think that tonight Mazzulla dropped the ball in that aspect. However, again, Joe's been solid, and I don't have too much to say about him. Something we do have to talk about, because it's pretty evident, is Jaylen Brown. 4 of 18. First, I want to say something. Brown's been awesome recently, so I'm not too mad at this. A bad shooting night happens. You would have liked to maybe see 7 of 18. You figure he makes 3 more shots, the Celtics win this game. But, I mean, Jaylen Brown has far outweighed the bad this season. So, I mean, I don't know, Franco, where are you at with Jaylen Brown in his performance tonight? How much stock are you putting into the Jaylen Brown game against the Oklahoma City Thunder?
I'm not really putting. This is one of those games that he should have been taking more of an approach at the rim. I mean, the Oklahoma City Thunder, rotationally wise and lineup wise, they're a very small team, very athletic, very young. Everyone who is on their team is basically, or who is getting playing minutes, is on a near rookie contract. And I think that Jaylen Brown, if he took, I don't know, 3 of those 3-pointers, took a step inside the 3-point line and tried to create a finish down low, which he did a couple of times. I mean, he had a great finish on Chet Holmgren after an up fake, and that's where he's succeeding, is when he's able to get to the rim one-on-one, finishing down low. And he wasn't. He was active down low, rebounding, had 6 rebounds tonight, and I would have liked to see a little less fouling from him. And I think just it was a little awkward of a matchup for him on the defensive side, and that's where he needed to step up.
I think that Brown also, again, it's a rarity for him to be shooting threes at a high volume because, quite frankly, this season he's been the only guy that's really been. I mean, other than Porzingis, that's really been settled into the paint. This guy has been over December. The course of December was the Jaylen Brown set the pace game. He was the guy that was getting to the basket. He was drawing fouls, drawing contact, kicking out. I bet Jaylen Brown's assist numbers, if it was a hockey assist, would be significantly higher because the amount of times Jaylen Brown drives to the rim, kicks out, which follows into a swing around the corner, lead pass into a corner three, it happens a lot. So I don't know. Personally, I'm not putting a lot of stock into it. I don't know where you are at, Ian or Seamus, but I'm not too worried. Brown has been so good and playing at such a high level that I'm not too worried about this game.
Yeah, I mean, every player has a bad game. It's just going to happen from time to time. Jaylen Brown has been arguably the best player for the Celtics over the last few weeks. We were literally just talking the last game how everything looks easy for Jaylen Brown. How everything looks easy for Jaylen Brown. He's getting to his spots, he's hitting his shots, and he's not panicking. This game he just kind of did the complete opposite. Maybe I kind of spoke too soon about it. That's kind of a joke, but I think he's fine. He's fine. The Thunder play like the Miami Heat do, where they are always grabbing at the ball. Like they are aggressive grabbing at the ball. So you're not always going to get into your spots very easily. And Jaylen Brown kind of had a struggle. There were a couple times, I think it was around the first or second quarter, where he tried posting up like SGA, and SGA just kind of poked the ball away. Or he would try to post up Casey Wallace, and he would just kind of hit the ball off his foot, and it would roll out of bounds. So that's just going to happen sometimes. You have bad games. And I think once Brown realized his spots from 2 weren't hitting, I think he then decided that he wanted to be a 3-point shooter. And
right,
there's kind of a reason why he hasn't been a 3-point shooter this season. So, but yeah, I don't take too much stock into this game. If he has another bad game on Friday, maybe you talk more about it, but it happens. I'm not going to be too concerned over this game.
I always look
Chet played a factor into that too.
Chet did, he's a tough shot
block.
was great at the rim today too.
I always look at these type of performances from players and, just maybe asterisk them a little bit or mark them rather and maybe just track them. And not really in a way of like, oh, what's wrong with this player? But just, is there something potentially? Could he be injured? Could, basically that's the question is, could he be injured? Because you see the first six of his first 10 shot attempts came from 3-point land tonight. And that kind of tells me he was settling way more than we've seen lately, because we've seen him go entire games where he shoots 20 shots and he won't take 6 3-point attempts, and he took 6 and 10 tonight. So that shows me he settled a little bit more tonight to start the game, and I'm not really sure exactly why that happened. I was watching him defensively too. There were moments where it maybe didn't look like he was moving around amazingly, but I don't think that really – what I saw wasn't injury-based. It was more of energy-based and in-the-moment intensity, and I thought there were moments in which the Celtics defense they were not engaged into this game. And I think Jaylen Brown on Friday, it's going to be a performance in which we're kind of going to be looking at and saying, if he starts the game in a similar way where he shoots half of his attempts from 3-point land and he's settling for shots away from the bucket, opposed to what we saw in December where he's just consistently attacking the rim, I think we can then raise a question of what's going on here. But I really want to see what happens Friday. And then moving forward, even if he plays a little off his game Friday, there's still a lot of opportunity in front of us. That's only a 2-game stretch in which we would see a weird sample from Jaylen Brown. But ultimately, the Celtics, I just want to bring this up again. The embarrassment of riches this team has, the fact Jaylen Brown has been the Celtics' best player and arguably behind Derek White this past month, and those players are a little bit relegated tonight, and yet you still have Tatum and Porzingis. Both of those players can win player of the game, and Porzingis, of course, did. You guys saw in the program earlier, but that's the Celtics. Even though this loss happened, and there are some certain flaws that we can point at, I think it's not really a worrisome loss in any manner whatsoever because of all the positives and all of what is not the norm, right? What is not typically the norm you can take away from what happened in this game.
I think that we're at a point where you might and again, we saw it. It's kind of phenomenal how the Celtics have even been in this position with Tatum playing as they've been playing, as he's been playing. So I wouldn't be shocked
December he was. Would you be surprised? This is insane. I saw this earlier today. He was a minus 3.8 net rating in the month of December, Jason Tatum. And the Celtics were still 12-2.
Well, again, that's the luxury with this team.
He's been good though, because the beginning of the year he was crazy,
right? But
I know he was insane. But
this December has, you saw the team strive and be good with a Tatum that was kind of struggling a little bit. I wouldn't be shocked if Jaylen Brown now maybe has a rough December. And again, over 82 games, there's highs and there's lows. But the idea is that your middle ground, the Celtics middle ground, which is where most teams are going to end up come playoffs, will be stronger than everyone else's. I think that's something that's really important to look at here with the Boston Celtics, is that making sure their middle ground is stronger than everyone else's. But again, it'll be interesting. Where we are at, I think in 3 weeks is going to be a big time tell. This gauntlet of January is a big test for us.
For certain, because this team right now, we're riding a hot streak where ultimately you could crown us the NBA champions right now. I mean, all the categories we lead in, how efficient we've been playing as of late, and you really look at our entire schedule. We have in December 2 dumb losses, one in Indiana, one in Golden State. The Golden State one is more dumb than the Indiana one, I would say, because the Indiana one went back and forth. The Golden State one, the Celtics had that game, completely threw it away. But then now you have this OKC loss on the schedule, and this is really one that we can pick apart, and there are a lot of positives for the Celtics and a lot of explanations as to why this sort of game happened. So if we come out with that, it's one of those losses we think the team should rebound from, like the Indiana loss, like the Golden State loss. And ultimately, I believe that the team moving forward will potentially, I will say potentially, come back from this loss, because we have some games on the schedule in which I believe the team should be motivated for. But this is going to be a stretch where the team, I believe, they have to focus in and make sure that this stretch coming up, they respond to this loss. And like I said, do not let what happened tonight in Oklahoma City snowball on Friday at home against the Utah Jazz, because after they play the Utah Jazz at home, they go on the road yet again for a couple of games. And I believe in that stretch, it's not going to be an easy.
No, it's our old friends 2 times in a row.
Yeah, it's
What's
insane.
that, Franco?
It's our friends 2 times in a row, the Indiana Pacers.
Yes, we're going
in
back
Indiana.
to Indianapolis.
And Indiana. Yep.
And I feel as if the Celtics, if they don't pay attention during this stretch, right, and engage themselves off of this last stretch where they didn't grab the entire attention of the NBA, but they established themselves, I believe, as the best team in the NBA with no other competitor really challenging them thus far in December. And this stretch, if they don't come out and respond, well, all of a sudden you're going to lose that title, and there's a lot more season to be had. So I want to see the Celtics consistently attack upon this stretch, and it's certainly going to be a tough one moving forward. But as you see here, Rob had to dip out from the show. Look at me. I'm the captain now. I'm the captain. Okay, I'm the captain. I'm the host now. So, Ian, we're gonna throw it over to you as I get out my stat sheet real quick because this Celtics win over the Thunder, or not win. Oh my gosh, I was really
so used
penciling
to
it in
saying
as a
win.
win. You know, I really had the 27-6 record on our. You see the season record go by the ticker here. I had the 27-6 ready. Instead, right now it's 26-7. But for this game, the next game is against the Utah Jazz coming up on Friday. And Ian, I think we all know one man coming to the Garden on Friday, Kelly Olynyk. This might be a revenge spot for him. I don't know about.
It would
I don't know
not
how y'all
surprise
think
me.
about that, but
Would
I'm
not surprise me in the slightest if Kelly Olynyk dropped like 20 on Friday. Would not shock me in the slightest. But yeah, Friday's going to be an important game because if you remember last year around this time, we lost to the Denver Nuggets on New Year's Day, and it felt like the season just kind of fell off from there. Like for
right.
me personally, it felt like the Celtics just completely collapsed right when the new year hit. And it's going to be important for the Celtics to come out on Friday and take care of business because I don't want to see another midseason collapse like that where they kind of just completely forget how to play basketball for a month and a half and they just don't play well. So, I mean, I had the Celtics record in January at 12-4. I think 12-4 is a pretty solid record to have based on the fact that they have 4 back-to-backs in a month and they have to play some really, really good teams. So 12-4 is my prediction for the month of January. And it's going to be interesting to see because the Celtics team, we've said all year the Celtics team is different. And they got to show that they're different. They got to show that they won't have another midseason collapse again.
And
That's kind of where I'm at.
let's note this too before I go down to you, Franco, that the Celtics, they played mostly Eastern Conference teams up to this point, but now we're seeing a slew of Western Conference teams we see before Christmas, and now after Christmas we went to San Antonio, Oklahoma City, and of course coming up the Utah Jazz. But Franco, this next stretch for the Celtics, what do you think they need to do against their opponents to keep the title in which they've now gained as what I believe is the best team in the league, which may be challenged after tonight. Who knows?
Preserve their gas. Spread out those minutes. I mean, it's going to be a very rough stretch on the schedule. As Ian mentioned, 4 back-to-backs. That means that 4 games most likely without Al Horford, or Kristaps Porzingis is most likely going to want a night or two off during those types of stretches. It's going to be getting those solid minutes and those solid contributions from those bottom of the rotation players that we have. We're going to be going against the Indiana Pacers, Jazz, all fast-paced teams, and the Indiana Pacers we're going to be playing against after that, right after Utah. So Utah is going to be bringing in a challenge. You know, Danny Ainge is always going to have his boys fired up to come into the Garden and try to beat us, especially with Colin Sexton. But then you look down the schedule, you got the return of Ime Udoka right after the Bucks. But if they can survive the month of February, the schedule seems to ease up a little bit on them, and that's right around the trade deadline, and that's when we'll really know what the true identity is of this team and when we can have a confident say or not if this team's going to make that raise that banner again.
This is ultimately why the team needs to win Friday night. And I'm not saying it's a must-win game by any metric because it's January against the Utah Jazz. So not exactly a must-win game with the record the Celtics have right now. However, the Celtics certainly want to have some urgency within this matchup, because you look at the games afterwards, 2 Indiana games on the road, Minnesota, Milwaukee, Houston. If you don't take care of business against Utah, those games are ultimately going to become challenging to the point where, well, you could go 500 over that record, and all of a sudden your record, if you're the Celtics, does not look as good as it once does at the beginning, or sorry, at the end, and really too at the beginning of December. And in this stretch, I believe this next game, it's just going to be crucial to respond to what we saw tonight, which was two teams who are going to be in the playoff mix later on down the line in the season who will not face more than the 2 times in the season unless they face in the finals later on down the line. So the Celtics won't really have to deal with this Oklahoma City Thunder team unless they're in the finals. However, the 2 teams playing on court tonight in Oklahoma City were 2 very talented, high executing teams, like high level of execution, that is. And both teams, I believe, the Celtics are in their prime, but the OKC Thunder, although they may be just a tad bit too young, right? A tad bit too young, I still believe they have that potential to go far in the playoffs like the Celtics did back in 17-18, or like, say, the Memphis Grizzlies did back in 2021-22, when that was their breakout season with Ja Morant, and they made it all the way up to the 2 seed, went to the second round. Ja was unfortunately hurt in Golden State. They didn't make the conference finals, but do I believe OKC could have that kind of season where they're breaking out like the Grizzlies in 2022, or like the Celtics did back in 17-18 with the Brown and Tatum squad, and then of course reemerging again in 22 as well? I think they could potentially. This could be their breakout season, or rather, right now it is playing out to be their breakout season. But in terms of being a playoff competitor, I believe they could be there at the end of the second round, battling a team in the West for a spot in the conference finals. Now, finals, it's going to be really tough going up against teams like Denver, LA, the Lakers, that is, and even the Clippers nowadays in the Western Conference, to the point where this Thunder team, they have a lot of competition, but I believe they're certainly equipped for it. And I always like to, at the end of the show, kind of talk about the other team. And, we have kind of last show, we talked more about the Thunder than we did the Spurs. And I know we got some good talk in about the Thunder, and even at the beginning of the show, talked about the Thunder. However, I believe this team, do you believe, both of you guys, this play by OKC in the Western Conference, if you were to give them a prediction of where they're going to finish and where they're going to go, what would you guys both say? And we'll start with Franco on the bottom.
I would say they're going to be probably an electric first round series. I think they're going to be able to, what people are going to see as an upset, even though they're probably going to be going in as a higher seed against a team like, per se, the Clippers, Lakers. They're going to be placed against one of those teams that are lower seeded but have that veteran experience. So if the Thunder can win a series against a seasoned team like the Lakers or Clippers, I think that they could definitely make a push. But they are just incredibly young right now, and I think they are just that star away, and they have so much youth that at some point they're going to have to splurge and create that super team, even though they've basically developed it from their own ground up.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the Thunder, they kind of remind me of the Memphis Grizzlies and the Sacramento Kings over the last few years. They have a chance to be a legitimate threat in the playoffs, but I don't know. Like, I think something I noticed, they don't have any rebounding at all. Like, they don't have any size outside of Holmgren. And I think they can make a trade for somebody to maybe get another piece to maybe help with that. But I don't know. It just seems like they're kind of small right now. They do kind of remind me more of the Grizzlies, where they don't have much center depth as it is. They have the other Jalen Williams as kind of their other backup big that they use, but they kind of rely on Holmgren a lot. And if they have to go up against, let's say they go up against the Lakers, is Anthony Davis going to be the only, are you going to stop Anthony Davis and LeBron James in a playoff series? But I don't know. Knowing this Thunder team, they might just be young enough, and they, the saying of like being young and stupid enough not to actually like grasp the situation. Like the Thunder may just say screw it, and they could probably make a run to the Western Conference Finals at their best, in my opinion. But I think if they run into Denver, I think they're kind of screwed.
Yeah, Denver's size is just good luck. It's like Jokic is.
And that's not disrespectful to the Thunder, because there's a lot of teams that if you run into Denver, there's a really good chance you're screwed. So
even the Suns, I mean, the Suns, I know people are trashing on the Suns right now, but like their big three, if they were all together, they would probably be a little bit better right now as a roster. But even their team is, with all of that offensive firepower, you question if they have enough size to go up against a team like Denver. And you do look at a lot of teams around the league and go, there's just no way that in a playoff series against the Denver Nuggets, they would have enough size and strength and versatility like the Nuggets to go up against them. And this is a good thing about the Celtics right now, is that I feel confident that they actually do have that size, versatility, and length. Now, do they have the same type of depth? We'll see. We have a different type of depth than Denver. They have young wings. We have more experienced players who play more of a set role in terms of either Luke Cornett being a center or Peyton Pritchard being a guard. We don't really have too many established wings off the bench. Sam Hauser, of course, is really establishing himself as a good rotation player, but I would say that our depth is very different than theirs in a way. Well, we both have depth that you could say at times is a bit shaky, just a little bit shaky at times. Although most of the time, if other players like Jamal Murray, Jokic, Tatum, Brown, and now we have Porzingis, Derek White is going off. I mean, he might be in the midst of an all-star season. All of those players, if they're playing at a high level, a lot of these role players, if just a couple of them can come along, the Peyton Watsons of the world, the Julian Strothers, the Peyton Pritchards, the Luke Cornets, the Sam Hauser. I love Julian Strother. Christian Brown also, another young guy for the Nuggets. All of these role players, they can play their role, right? Their defined role with all of the other stars maximized and optimized, playing within their roles as stars. I mean, these two teams, I would love to see the Nuggets and the Celtics in a final series between each other. But I think after tonight, I don't know, would you guys feel – I feel like these games – let me bring you guys to a scenario here, right? These games, we see these games against OKC, Orlando, Indiana, right? We lose these games to the young, hungry teams. I know we have a win against Indiana. That was without Tyrese Halliburton way early in the season. The second one, in-season tournament, we, of course, fall in. All of these games, you kind of feel like, man, if the Celtics face these teams in the playoffs, would they be able to actually beat them? Like, we anticipate we're not going to see some of these teams in the playoffs. And if we were, that it would be home cooking, that we have 2 home games to start off. And that, I kind of detailed it a little bit earlier in the show, where some of the adjustments we clearly saw out there tonight and some of the experimentation and trying to pull OKC towards a certain play style could have completely affected the outcome to where the Celtics adjust in a game 2 and potentially it looks completely different against all these teams. But do you guys ever think that any of these teams, like, you look at them and go, man, in a playoff series, we'd actually be kind of screwed in some regard? And maybe
screwed.
Right. I wanted to change that and say,
it feels like
maybe we
it
would
feels
be,
like it would be more.
We would
feels
be
like it would be more like the
compromised in a
Atlanta
certain
Hawks.
way of play. Is basically
like, remember the Atlanta
I'm
Hawks
getting
series last year? Like, that's how it kind of feels to me, in my opinion. Like, if we faced a team like the Pacers, like, that could go to a 6 or 7 game series. Or a team like the Magic. Like, that could potentially be a 6 or 7 game series. There's just a lot of talented young teams in the NBA as a whole. So, the years of LeBron and the Warriors going 16-0 in the playoffs, or like 12-0 through the conferences. That's probably not going to happen for a very long time, in my opinion. There's just too many talented teams in the NBA to where I'm not going to say there's any given night there's a team that could upset another team in the playoffs, but there is a chance that you could see these lower seeded, young, hungry teams like in Indiana, like in Orlando, push a team like Milwaukee or push a team like Boston to a 6 or 7 game series in the first round. Like, that's a very real possibility. I still don't think that they're that talented enough to beat those teams in a 7 game series, but I think they can definitely give you a scare and kind of make it difficult for another team moving forward.
Yeah, and your thoughts, Franco, on this point of view of potentially younger teams causing trouble for the Celtics in earlier rounds of the playoffs?
So earlier rounds of the playoffs, we've seen what this team is capable of against these teams, and never in these games it doesn't feel like the teams are really. I feel like they're just getting a jab at the Celtics and aren't going in. They're winning a battle against the Celtics and they're not going to war with the Celtics. I mean, going into a 7 game series is a completely different beast than playing a team in the regular season. And a team like the Pacers, yeah, they'll probably punch us in the mouth one time during a series, but there's just too much star power, veteran experience, as we've seen. Jaylen Brown, JT, I don't think they're going to be here to be playing games when it comes to playoff time. I mean, when it comes to the Indiana Pacers, yes, right now they're going in a little bit timid or kind of with like a brush it off mentality. It feels like going into these games and not really honing in on maintaining a pace against them. But if the Celtics had to go to a 7 game series, it's a chess match, and I don't see the Celtics losing it just because of pure hustle and just attrition.
The power of friendship.
That's what
It's like that meme where it's like the power of friendship versus, like the super talented team. I think that can get you far in a playoff run, but I'm not trying to I'm not trying to take them as like they're not a legitimate threat, because they can be. We have seen if the Celtics, but the biggest thing with this is that it's basically going to be the Celtics that beat themselves, or the Celtics are going to take care of business. Because we've said this a billion times. I don't think there's another team in the Eastern Conference that can legitimately beat the Celtics in a 7 game series. Maybe except Miami. But most of the time, it's going to be the Celtics losing to themselves by making careless mistakes, not staying engaged in the game, turnovers, bad shots, bad threes. There's just so many things that the Celtics do that could potentially harm them in a playoff series, and has harmed them in playoff series in the past. So I think it's going to be determined on, are the Celtics going to be, I don't want to say grown up, but are they going to be determined? Are they going to have that edge where it's like, we're going to stay focused. We're not going to take a game off. We're not going to take a playoff. It's just going to be one of those things where it's like they have to be on all the time when it comes to the playoffs, and they can't make the simple mistakes that we've seen over the last few years.
In some of these playoff runs, we've seen that ability for the Celtics kind of overcome that adversity of facing the better teams, and that power friendship, right? Where it's like, we're not as talented, but we're going to play harder and we're going to play better together, right? And ultimately, in some of these playoff series, it's like that can get you somewhere. That can get you somewhere. We've seen Celtics teams in the past beat teams they really had no business beating and making it farther into the playoffs than everyone thought. But now the Celtics are on the other end where they got to watch out, because they are the team that could potentially be that team that sees that other team come into the Garden and, oh, they're playing at a higher level than us, higher intensity than us, and they're executing better and believing in what they're running more than the Celtics. But I don't really have that concern in regards to this veteran Celtics team because we've seen it the entire month of December. They've been able to consistently build on both ends of the floor and build a rhythm specifically offensively that they feel comfortable with. And they still have not lost at home. I want to point that out right now. Still no home losses. This one comes again on the road down in Oklahoma City. It's kind of a far flight for the Celtics. Maybe not that far, but farther than Toronto, Detroit. We didn't go to Toronto or Detroit, but some of the teams further northeast in the Massachusetts area there, closer to it. So the Celtics, they haven't lost at home yet, and I believe the whole team is looking at them. They're all in their primes, clearly. Every single player up to this point is pretty well in their prime or just getting to there, or just, if you're Al Horford, probably exiting his prime. However, I don't believe this team is going to fold in a playoff series against a young, hungry team like the Pacers, like the Magic, like the Thunder, for that matter, because at the end of the day, the players in which are housed on the Celtics roster, they've been in the NBA a lot longer than some of these other players. And I believe with that extra experience, extra physical strength, because I think that's also underrated too. We've seen Brown and Tatum every single year. It seems as if they're adding muscle, and some of these younger teams just straight up, they don't have that year 7, year 8 muscle. They just don't. They don't have that 27, 28-year-old muscle. And I believe in a playoff series where you're playing 7 games against another team head to head constantly, that really plays a factor. And I believe the Celtics, this could be a special season for them in the long run, because looking at the month of December, no team beat them through 4 quarters. And tonight it was a little bit of the same thing in that aspect. Did we show the lead tracker earlier in the show here at all?
No, I don't think we did.
I think we can show it if I have it available to me right now. I do. And so the lead tracker in this game looks as such when it appears up on screen. The Celtics in this game, it's always the story of the game. Yikes. Well, the fourth quarter, I mean, geez. That's unfortunate, because I don't know, just kind of going back on this game for a second. It's fortunate the Celtics stretch in which they went through, because this game looks a lot different if they don't dig themselves that in, because you see there near the end of the fourth quarter, it's a completely different game for the Boston Celtics. And this game, they had a lead at halftime. That's the funniest part. It was almost like the Laker game the other night, where on Christmas, where the Lakers, throughout the night, the Lakers were not very present within the game relative to the Celtics yet. At halftime, it was close for everybody to see on ABC that, the Lakers and Celtics, they're pretty close in their matchup. Most of the time, it was a game more than a double-digit discrepancy. But why I brought this up, but it was a good distraction for me adding this ticker to in the show on, because completely forgot to have it in here. So there's the lead tracker for tonight, folks. And we're going to give you Franco. Franco is no longer with us. Only in spirit. Not exactly in that way. Not in that way, but just not on the stream anymore. But the Celtics, you see on the bottom ticker there, they play on Friday against the Utah Jazz. And I believe in this game, this is not a must-win game for the Celtics, but
it's a very, very, very should-win game.
Go out there. It's a very should-win game, and if they don't win, it's kind of like, okay, let's not lose another one, because these are the type of games we kind of looked at last January. I remember that Florida trip by the Celtics last year. I was in Florida while they were in Florida as well, and I didn't see a win. I didn't see a win while I was down there, And I don't want to see the same thing happen to the Celtics again in January. And we all know that if a team does not come back from these type of losses and starts to snowball, or I should say, if they lose a game like Friday's game against the Jazz at the Garden at home, right, against a team you should beat, this is arguably, I don't know, is it worse? It's probably worse than the Pistons, right? Because the Pistons had a motivation to win that game, and this one for the Jazz, it's like, well, this is just a random game at the Garden. You could say Kelly Olynyk undoubtedly could have a revenge game, but outside of that, the Celtics should win this game on Friday, and if they don't, I don't know how it shakes out moving forward in January with a lot of tough games on the schedule. But for this post game tonight, we've been on here for quite a while, and some shenanigans with the graph. We've shown all 3 graphic orientations tonight, everybody.
Yay.
I hope everybody enjoyed all of our graphic and orientations. This is the 2-man one. You saw the 3-man one when Franco was in here, and of course when Rob was in here, that was the 4-man one. But I don't know. I hope everybody appreciates the design out there, because certainly switching between all of these, not exactly easy at the end of the day. But this is pretty much all we have for y'all on this post-game show. Ian, I'm going to throw it over to you one more time for your final thoughts on tonight's Celtics Thunder game from Oklahoma City. The Celtics, of course, come back to the Garden on Friday to face the Utah Jazz. But Ian, your final thoughts on tonight's
Final
loss.
thoughts. Sadly, with this loss, this makes the Celtics go from number 1 team in the league to the number 1 record in the league. I know it's a real disappointment, but the Celtics drop from number 1 record in the league to number 1 record in the league with this loss.
Jeez, bro. I mean, can we?
I know
catch a
why.
break?
I
catch
can't
a
think of
break?
another team that has it worse than Boston. Can't think it.
I mean, for real, this is the this stretch, just sleepless nights. Just thinking about how good this team can be.
Another time.
Have a better record than themselves, but yeah, I mean, this game, the Celtics, I believe, it's the next game. It's right in front of them. It's kind of one of those layup games where you lose this one, it's easily explainable. It's kind of excusable from a couple of angles.
But just don't give us the reason to have to make the excuse. That's pretty much it.
Well, also, like, moving forward, if what we see tonight doesn't transpire Friday, there's no reason to harp on what happened tonight as something crazy, because this team has been on consistent stretch, and this is one game you play. They've arguably, this is their best team they've played since the Lakers, Clippers, maybe even the Kings. Could say the Warriors, but even all of those teams, I mean, the Clippers had Kawhi missing, the Warriors, no Draymond, the Lakers, I mean, some people debate if they're even good. So, I mean, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, anytime they're going to compete, but the rest of their team, it's going to be a little bit tough. This game for the Celtics was one of their better games, or their better opponents in a long time. And the next game is one of those layup games where you come out and you get the job done. All of a sudden, you don't have the last game will not be a loss to Oklahoma City. It'll be a win to the Utah Jazz. And then after that, you're facing, again, better opponents in the schedule. And we talked about it with Justin on here. It's kind of ridiculous that we all go off of strength of schedule for this team moving forward. At the end of the season, certainly we see some lesser opponents, but the Milwaukees of the world, Houston, we still out there, Dallas, Indiana twice. All of these are tough teams. Minnesota, they're second in record in the league right now. All these teams are going to be tough moving forward, and the Celtics on Friday certainly need to come out with some urgency and some fight on the Garden floor. But for us tonight on the Celtics Talk Weekly post-game show, that is all we have for you guys. After the Celtics unfortunately come away with their 7th loss of the season. Only 7 losses in January so far, Ian. only 7 losses. Do you think we're even going to get to 10 losses in January? I mean, I know you said 12-4, but there's a possibility maybe we talk at All-Star break and it's not 10 losses. Who knows?
I think we hit 10 losses before the All-Star break.
I don't know, man. This is an all-time great team. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there. But that's all we have for you guys here tonight on the Celtics Talk Weekly post-game show. I am your host, Seamus Zarlingo, a.k.a. Celtics Everyday. Beside me right here, Ian Anangelo at Anangelo on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. And, of course, here earlier was Franco and Rob. Go hit them up on social media at Rob Haytayan and, of course, at Boston Sports Hour. I don't know if he wants me to shout it out exactly yet, but he released it earlier. It'll be Franco's new podcast. Everybody go check that one out on your guys' free time. And, of course, when he comes back here, everybody will be here on the Celtics Talk Weekly postgame as well. But for tonight, that is all we have for you. And as I always say, thank you all for listening and go Celtics.